The Prime Minister today testified at the Finance Committee hearing in Ottawa, 90 minutes, grilled about the We charity, or the We group, getting a contract without competition. That was for a summer grant program. The Prime Minister's family does have ties to the group, so does the Finance Minister. Let's bring in the leader of the official opposition. Andrew Scheer joins us now from Regina. Thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you very much.
So we learned that the Prime Minister, that he pulled cabinet consideration of that contract initially on May 8th. He says it was the first time he learned that We was getting the contract. He had a lot of questions and concerns, and so he delayed a vote on that. Do you accept his accounting of that story?
No, I don't. We heard that. I don't know that we learned anything from it. That statement almost opens up more questions than it answers. Why was We told that they were allowed to start incurring expenses as of May 5th? If the Prime Minister pushed back on May 8th, why then were they allowed to start getting the program up and running? That doesn't make any sense at all. We also heard the Prime Minister try to hide behind the public service and say that, he asked them to do their due diligence. Well, clearly that due diligence wasn't done. We now know that this organization was in trouble. So there's still a lot more questions today than there were even this morning.
So the public service, according to the Prime Minister, was overwhelmed. They couldn't carry out the contract given the burden of other programs related to COVID-19. It had to, they said, go to We. Do you accept that?
No, I don't. We've since learned that they didn't really do any analyses of other entities. The YMCA, for example, has come out and said that they believe that they could have delivered this type of program. A simple Google search would have shown that We was in a lot of trouble, breaking their bank covenants, board members resigning, and then this bizarre agreement with a shell company. Instead of signing the contribution agreement directly with We, they set it up through some kind of a shell company to protect We on the liability side. None of that makes any sense. We know in the past few years that members of Justin Trudeau's immediate family were paid big bucks to give speeches. We know Justin Trudeau was promoted, given a platform to get his message out to young people. And we know that We goes to corporations and pitches them. If you give this organization money, they tell young kids that your product or service is cool. And that seems to be what has happened here. Justin Trudeau helped out an organization that was in trouble, who had provided him with a political platform, except he did it with your money. He did it with Canadian taxpayers' money.
We also learned the ethics commissioner did look at the work Sophie Gregoire Trudeau was going to do with the organization and did not find a problem with it. Is that still a problem for you?
Well, that's a very narrow piece of this. It's traditional and it's totally fine. Not only is it fine, but it's praiseworthy when spouses of prime ministers are engaged in philanthropic work. To our knowledge, none of that included Sophie Gregoire Trudeau being paid, but it does turn out that expenses were covered and that other members of his immediate family were paid. And again, that's just one aspect to this. The fact that this was not put through a competitive process, that they just gave a sole source, nobody else even had an opportunity to apply for this program to We. That's where the conflict comes in. We has produced election-style ads promoting Justin Trudeau. We know that members of the Kielburger family have donated to Justin Trudeau's campaigns in the past, and now they're told that they can start incurring expenses before a program's even announced, and that they'll be able to keep up to $45 million in administrative offenses. This whole thing still stinks.
What has to happen now? In your mind, where do we go from here? What needs to happen?
Well, we need Justin Trudeau to be able to corroborate what he said. We expect that when we ask for things like minutes at cabinet meetings, that he'll provide that. If there were memos going back and forth between the Prime Minister's office and the civil service, then we expect him to produce that. If he can't produce the evidence that on May 8th he told them to go back and look again, then I'm certainly not going to believe it. And it still doesn't answer the fact as to who's going to be held responsible. Clearly, the due diligence wasn't done. Clearly, all the red flags that were out there in plain sight were not noticed by this Liberal government. So whose fault is that? Is Justin Trudeau going to throw someone under the bus as he did in the SNC-Lavalin affair? Is he going to take some responsibility? So we're going to keep pushing for answers to this and evidence to corroborate or disprove Justin Trudeau's testimony today.
Okay, so who do you think is responsible? Who needs to take responsibility for this? Because clearly the Conservatives are saying heads need to roll.
Well, I would start with Mr. Trudeau himself. I believe that he lost the moral authority to govern this country back when he interfered in the SNC-Lavalin affair, and then failed to tell the truth about it. The Liberal Party has a right to govern this country. They received more seats in the last election. Our party received more votes. They received more seats. So they have the constitutional right to govern this country. But there's nowhere is it written. It's not set in stone that Justin Trudeau has to be the leader of the Liberal Party. And I continue to challenge Liberal MPs. This isn't how government is supposed to operate. Remember back in the first few days of the COVID pandemic, Justin Trudeau's first piece of legislation, his very first action, was to write himself unprecedented powers and sideline the role of the opposition. Well, now I believe we know why. What else has he done? What other things are out there in these $1 billion worth of contracts and payments that he's gone out, sent out the door during this pandemic? Why was he so keen on removing the role of parliamentary oversight? I think we're starting to see why.
Conservative leader Andrew Scheer, I am out of time, but I appreciate your time. Thank you for stopping by the program.
Thank you.